This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen, Shane Dale, and our buddy Blair Willis joining us for the entire show. Listen, things haven't gone well with the football team, so we need some positivity and some real thought, Shane. We needed to bring some intelligence on the show, and that's what Blair brings to us.
Well, thanks for that, Eric. Start off the show by insulting my... No, I understand what you said. No, Blair's a lot smarter than both of us. He has some great takes on social media, as do so many Wildcat fans these days. So looking forward to getting started.
All right, Shane, before we get into buy or sell, let's start with Shane's standouts.
All right. Well, got a couple, actually three of them for you this week. For men's golf, and maybe Blair can help me with this one. Senior, I don't know if it's Zach Pollo or Polo. It's spelled like Pollo. But anyway, he earned his second tournament title by going 2 under at the St. Andrews Links Collegiate. So congrats to Zach on that achievement. For volleyball, Jalen Hodge became the 8th player in U of A history to reach 1,400 kills. She had 20 kills in Arizona's matchup at ASU. Now, Arizona lost the match in 4 games, but they were very competitive against ASU, which is ranked 13th nationally. So I know we hate to lose to ASU at anything, but it was a good showing and a sign that the program is on the rise, and Jalen has been a very big part of that. So congrats to her on that milestone. And finally, our triathlon team, Eric, finished the NCAA West National Qualifier event, tied with ASU for first place to earn a spot at Nationals. The top 3 teams earned a spot, and Arizona was tied for first out of 16 teams. 5 U of A athletes finished in the top 15 overall, highlighted by Kelly Wetland, who finished in second place. So congrats to Kelly and the entire team on that accomplishment. That's what I got.
Shane, I appreciate the positivity before we get going in buy or sell. And now it is time for buy or sell presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com, use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, and get $5 off. And after you do that, please make sure to fill out the post-purchase survey and mention Wildcat Country. And Shane and I will be very happy with you. All right, Blair, I'm going to start with you for number 1. Arizona's 2024 football team is broken with no fix in sight. Buy or sell?
I guess that's a good one to start with. A couple disappointing weeks. Obviously, it's been a rockier, maybe first 6 games than a lot of us hoped for. But I'm going to sell that notion. It's not broken beyond repair. It's going to take some work. It's not going to be easy, but it's a good group of guys. It's a little bit depleted, especially on the defensive side of the ball with some of the veteran secondary guys. But I think you really have to believe in this group. A lot of the veterans that came back and are the core of this group. I know that the coaching staff is taking some criticism from certain sections of the fan base right now, but it's a really personable coaching staff that cares about these players a lot. I know they've only been here a year, maybe Coach Aquina and some others for a little bit longer, but they care about the program too. And when you lose a game on the road, like this team did at BYU, you lose a tough one at home the week before. It doesn't hurt anybody more than it hurts those coaches and those players. So I have no doubt that this has been a week where this team's trying to rally around itself, and they're going to try to find some answers to fix some of the problems that are holding them back. They're close. It hasn't been pretty. It hasn't been easy, but it's not as bad necessarily as it might feel when we compare it to how much of the end of the second half of last season felt, which was a 7-game win streak. And we almost made it look easy at times through part of that win streak. And winning football games is not easy, especially in this Big 12 conference. So I think this team's figuring itself out a little bit, and I think there's some better days ahead of us, and hopefully very soon.
All right, Shane, you and I have preached the last few weeks. I mentioned that it was going to be a roller coaster, and it has. And as Blair spoke to it last year around this time, it was your birthday. Happy belated birthday, by the way. Arizona started a winning streak that didn't end until September 13th this year.
Yeah.
So, dare I ask you the same question? This team, this 2024 version, is broken with no fix in sight. Are you buying or selling that?
Well, let me start with this. I think this is a team that, as of right now, definitely isn't greater than the sum of its parts, which is what last year's team became. This is a collection of very talented and very loyal players who played for a different staff last year, with some new players and a mostly new coaching staff that really has yet to find any sort of rhythm or identity, I would say. And now you got some injuries to deal with too, like Blair mentioned. You mentioned, Eric, that one of the reasons last year's team was so successful was because it was one of the winners in the annual injury lottery. They didn't have very many.
Yeah, yeah.
That hasn't been the case this year, especially on defense. And then you top that off with not having your star running back. And just looking back to the last game, they lost Jacob Manu for almost the entire game against BYU. Had some tough calls go against them. I'm not blaming the officials for the loss, but that's just a fact. So is the team broken? No, I'm going to sell that. But I think this team has faced a kind of adversity that last year's team never ran into, and it's showing so far.
Yeah, I think that's a great way that you guys have both answered that. I'm gonna sell this. I don't think they are fully broken, but they're fractured, and there is a difference. I mean, it's not a clean break, but if they lose this weekend, I mean, I'm just gonna say it right now. If they lose this weekend, I mean, you can throw any hopes of redeeming the season out the window, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe I'm wrong. I just think the importance of this game on Saturday cannot be understated. Blair, I want to ask you something separately that was not on the itinerary here. I have said for a long time that when you're going through a season and it's special, you need to live in the moment because you never know when it's going to repeat itself. You worked for this school and this team for a long time. Did you guys do that? Like when you were going through some of the magical years with Stoops and Rich Rod 2014, for example, maybe even 2009, 8 or 9. Like, did you appreciate it in the moment? Did you appreciate it afterwards? What was your kind of mindset on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. The funny thing is, a football season goes by so fast, and yet at the same time, each week almost seems like its own season. It almost seems like a long period of time. Especially when you lose. I mean, it's almost like you can't wait to get to the next Saturday, like just to get that bad taste out of your mouth. When you're winning, it certainly feels good. I mean, everybody's injuries that the team has, their bodies feel better, your minds feel better, you're more spirited getting back to your first practice of the week, whether it's on a Sunday night like Coach Rodriguez's teams did. A lot of times he had his 24-hour rule, win or lose, we were back out 24 hours later to either get the bad taste out or just, move the good feelings into the back burner because you had something else to turn your attention to. But you really you do live in that moment week to week. And the funny thing about football, maybe more so than like baseball or even basketball, is one win feels like a win streak a lot of times, right? Like in baseball, you got to win 3, 4, 5, 6 to start feeling like you're on a roll. But in football, that one game can really kind of flip you in a positive direction just because of what it feels like in that locker room and in that moment. And then, what the next week of practice looks like. What I'll say, though, too, about football, and I think it's getting harder across the country, and this version of the Big 12 is a great example of it. Week to week, I mean, what you did last week doesn't matter. If you won by, 25 points, you better be right back to work the next week because somebody might be coming off a 25-point loss ready to beat you. I mean, it's a really balanced league. Teams in this league have figured out how to really do more with less, compared to the teams that left this league, like Oklahoma and Texas that went on to the SEC. You're left with a bunch of teams that have always had to fight and scrap. I think Arizona, kind of fits that mold too, coming from the Pac-12. And so I'm looking forward to our Cats kind of fighting and scrapping and trying to get one of those one-game win streak started this week that might spark something bigger when we look back in a few weeks.
Now, I don't know what you and Shane will pick for later in the show as far as the Colorado game. So we haven't talked about that. All the picks are usually off the cuff. We'll find that out. I don't know which way either of you are leaning. I don't know if you've seen my pick that I put in our itinerary. That may change before the end of the show. We'll see. Here we go. All right. Number 2, Shane, I'll start with you. Going back to Saturday's game, which was a debacle. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Are you blaming coaching or are you blaming execution more so?
I think the BYU game in particular was more on the execution side, and I think it begins and ends, at least on offense, with Noah Fafita, who just hasn't been the same guy he was last year for the most part. I think the defense has still been pretty good. A lot of points BYU scored were off turnovers when they were in bad. I mean, the pick six at the end of the game, but beyond that, I mean, defense was put in some bad spots. I don't think collectively they played very badly. Fafita's thrown more interceptions and touchdowns. His completion percentage is way down from last year. To his credit, he continues to take ownership of his struggles. But I think the fact that Arizona just doesn't have the skill players they had last year is a big deal as well. And he just doesn't seem to have a rhythm with or trust his offensive line as much as he needs to. And like a lot of people have noted, he's taken longer to get the ball out, over 3 seconds now on average versus closer to 2.5 seconds last year. So I don't know how much of that you can hang on coaching, but I think the BYU game was more on the execution side than the coaching side.
All right, Blair, coaching or execution last Saturday?
Yeah, when I saw this question was on the itinerary for today, I kind of cringed at the word blame because I don't feel like blame is 100% necessary. Especially when you're attributing it to one game. The coaches are working hard. I mean, Coach Aquina on the defensive side. I mean, he's really depleted in that secondary right now, but they're still getting a lot out of that group. I mean, the defensive front. I know there were some questions coming into the season, but I think they've started to really round into form and fight and scrap up there against some of these really good, big veteran lines. Lost Jacob Manu on the first series of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So the defensive side of the ball, I feel pretty good about, even though they're going to be down several starters going forward. Offensively, it's really been a big schematic change in a lot of ways, probably a little more drastic than I was expecting coming into the season. I'd watched a little bit in the fall camp, and the run game was going to be a lot different. But we have to also, too, not only with the schematic change, understand that, running back one is down. We haven't had, the person that was tabbed to be the starting running back all through camp hasn't played since the New Mexico game. And he's a little bit more of a dynamic rusher, than the other two backs that we've been using here recently. There's been injuries along the offensive line, that a lot of changes there. It's been hard to get consistency amongst that group. Same with the receivers. I mean, we even brought in a transfer, Raymelo Murphy, who was expected to be a rotation guy. He was out for a couple weeks with an injury. Malachi Riley was expected to be a bigger part of this offense. He went down with an injury at K-State. So been a lot of moving parts in personnel, a lot of changing scheme. So I don't really think that there's a lot of blame to go around. For that game. It's just like Shane said, we're not executing clean enough. But also it's probably taken the coaching staff a little bit more time to figure out how to put these players in position to be successful in this new system. And Noah's kind of been the one that's taken the brunt of that in terms of his development within this offense and kind of getting used to some of these new, passing concepts and the coverages that, Tetairoa McMillan's drawing. I mean, it's a different look than we saw last year because teams couldn't use this coverage knowing Jacob Cowing was on the field and Tanner McLaughlin, and we had a little bit better run game a year ago than we do right now. So I'm not ready to blame anybody. It just is what it is. It's just time to clean it up. It's time to move on and get a game plan for Colorado and see what it looks like Saturday.
I think you make a great point, though, Blair. And I made this point the other week. I think we all overestimated Arizona, not factoring in the fact that they lost so much. Cowing, McLaughlin, the running backs, Michael Wiley and company, Jordan Morgan, who was a first-round pick. The entire defensive line, I mean, on defense, they're doing a great job considering, as you said, no Maldonado, no Stukes. Do you have any injury updates that you can share? Like, I'm concerned about Takario Davis missing this week, and that might be enough to change my pick if I knew he was out. We don't know yet. Do you have any insight? Is Riley done for the year? We know Stukes is, but
I have zero insight, but it just kind of my observations of what I saw. I would think Takario's is more of just kind of a lingering issue that he had back in camp. He missed a little bit of time in camp, just some type of lower extremity. I would think he might be at least questionable at best this week, or he might be a questionable, if not a better condition. Stukes, Maldonado, I mean, those guys look like long-term injuries. I'm a little bit more curious about cornerback. I mean, we lost, we were down two other cornerbacks in that game at BYU that went out with some type of injury. So I'm not real sure what that depth looks like, but I think Coach Aquina will find a way. He'll motivate somebody and get them coached up to be in position to make a play.
Yeah, I think I'm concerned with Travis Hunter now being able to play. Now I'm excited to watch him in person at Arizona Stadium. Jimmy Horn Jr., their number 2 receiver, Both those guys left against Kansas State, but apparently are healthy enough to play on Saturday. So yeah, I'm a little concerned about Arizona's ability to stop them, but I don't think it's a coaching issue. I think, well, it is partially, but it's talent. I mean, the lack of talent is not, or the talent is not up to par where it was last year. Any way you want to spin it, that's the case. So let me ask kind of a bonus question here. Shane, I'll start with you on this one. When we see on social media, for example, or message boards, and people say, I've seen enough of Brennan, it's time to let him go. How do you respond to that, considering these people clearly don't understand it would take $10 million for Brennan to go away and $10 million to find another coach from a school that's already facing a budget shortfall?
I don't know how many different ways I can say it that I already haven't, or that I already have. I think I mentioned before the season that I think there could be some growing pains because change is always difficult. I think there's more change on this team than we even really want to acknowledge going into the season, and a lot of that was the guys were moving on to the NFL. They didn't have any or didn't have a chance to play at Arizona anymore because their time was up. I don't know what else to say beyond the fact that they're dealing with with a lot of change, dealing with a lot of injuries. I still think, and look, even if Arizona doesn't win another game the rest of the season, which I hope is not the case, but we still won't. And even if they play better the rest of the season, we still won't know whether Brett Brennan's the guy long term. I still think, based on his ability to recruit and build relationships, can we still give him some credit for bringing so many guys back? That to me is a good sign, and his ability to recruit at Arizona, bring in transfers going forward. And if that wasn't the case, then the expectations wouldn't be so high, and there wouldn't be as much weeping and gnashing of teeth on social media right now. So I roll my eyes at it a little bit. I think it's too early to say. Again, I mentioned this as also that 2 years ago we were wondering, is Johnny Nansen the right guy, defensive coordinator? And then a year later we're singing his praises. So yeah, I understand. Patient. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Jed Fish lost to NAU, went 1-11, and we were like, what the heck is with this Fish guy? What a terrible hire. 2 years later, they're 10-3 and beat Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl.
Well, and I pointed out as well, someone pointed out on social media that I forget the name of the guy who was there before Lute Olson, who was just there for 1 year. Ben Lindsay, yeah, and he was fired, and look how that worked out. I'm like, well, if you guys were if social media was around back in 83, 84, Lute would have been gone after a year because he went 11-17 his first year. So I understand the frustration. I do. I get it. I'm a fan too. I understand it, but sometimes you just have to let things play out. And I know that that's difficult, but it's just the way it is.
All right, Blair, once again, we're going off the script. We're going off script here. And you can answer this however you choose. Would you consider Arizona's fan base more fair weather than you would like? I would. So I'll just say that. I would, in that the fact that we're 6 games in already calling for a guy's head, and he hasn't even brought in his own players yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I would. But it's a little bit bigger, there's a big picture issue to it. That's Arizona basketball has been great for a long time. I mean, we're going on over 3 decades of it. The fan base has just been truly incredible. And that fan base goes back even before McHale Center. It goes back into those Bear Down gym years. There's a great basketball history here in Tucson. Football's been a little bit more sporadic, and it's been a more transient football crowd. It hasn't been quite as loyal or as organic as the basketball fan base grew and developed over time. What I say now, I think you look at the last 10 years of just in the West Coast, along the West Coast footprint, and this is part of the reason the Pac-12 fell apart. And Arizona was a part of this. Arizona State's a part of this. It's become much more of a fair weather. It's been, you have to win first and then people will show up. We're now going up against these teams in the Big 12, the Kansas States, the Oklahoma States, the Baylors, the BYU. I mean, basically anywhere in the Big 12 footprint right now. I mean, these fans show up no matter what. And it's not, they want to win just as much as we do, probably want to win more than our fan base wants to win, actually. They're more willing to support it to get the results that they want. But what game day looks like at those places is so different than what football game day looks like here in Tucson. Game day for them is an event. It's something that they look forward to all week. It's an all-day thing. It's a lifestyle thing. For us, it's like, well, we want our football team to be good, but if they're not good, we're not going to support them. So it's really a cultural difference for us. And so if it's a fair weather, to use your term, Eric, I'm not sure, certainly we're fair weather. And that's a little bit of the problem. That's a little bit of the inherent problem. And it's probably a reason that someone like Jed Fish leaves a year early. Now, he got a great opportunity to go to Washington where he's going to double his salary, not just his, but his staff and everybody else.
And miss a
But
bowl
part of
game.
it, I think I talked with you a while back, was the fact that, he probably knew winning 10 games again was going to be really hard at Arizona. And building a fan base here was going to be even harder. And so he went to a place, Washington, that's got a fan base. And it's going to be a lot easier to get to 10 wins at some point in the next few years at Washington than it probably was going to be at Arizona. So that's just kind of where we are a little bit. And I'm not sure what the answer is to fix that, other than I just encourage Wildcat fans to love your team. We need to make Arizona Stadium, we need to make the campus for 8 hours on game day the place to be in Tucson. Like, there's no reason we can't get 50,000 people to campus every other Saturday during the fall to support the football team. It's a city of Tucson thing as much as it is a university or a football program thing.
That is a great answer to that question. I also want to add this. For a lot of the year, we look forward to the fall. And we look forward to the fall because of football. Obviously the weather gets nicer. Summer in Arizona is what it is. But the weather gets nicer and we have football. And for a long time, including our childhoods, what college football was the innocence of football. I mean, it was the rivalries. It's not as innocent as it once was, but to me, it's still a wonderful game. I like it more than the NFL. And I like the NFL, but I love going to the games. And Neil Brown, the coach of West Virginia, who Shane Dale is a big fan of, said today to a reporter, he said, when they said, well, why should fans come to the games? And he's like, because we have a great in-stadium experience. You can't say that at Arizona. The in-stadium experience is I mean, it's cool when they're winning, but otherwise it's So I think there's something to that. I think that's a really, really, really good point, Blair. All right, number 3, Shane, I'll start with you. Reaching a bowl game seems like a far-fetched idea at this point. Buy or sell?
I'm going to buy it. This team's out of sync. And I still like Brent Brennan. I think he'll do well at Arizona. I know everyone rolling their eyes. I can hear the eyes rolling to the back of their heads as I say that. But that opinion doesn't change from game to game with me like it does for some fans. But this particular team has a lot of problems that we've already listed. Injuries, Krosky Merritt's absence, coaching staff still getting acclimated to its players and vice versa. And I don't think everything is going to magically turn around for the team this year. Also, I was texting back and forth after the BYU game, Eric, with our friend Barrett Baker. One of the things that occurred to me is, referring to Noah Fafita specifically, I wonder if he's sort of being punished for his loyalty. In other words, maybe, and this is a big maybe, but it's something I've thought about. Maybe he would have been better off going somewhere else and finding the right coaching and system for him versus staying loyal to Arizona. And I hate saying that because I'd like to see more loyalty in sports, both at the college and the pro levels. And I don't necessarily think it's true, but it's like any job. And I've experienced this in my professional life. Sometimes there's no right or wrong. There's just a fit or not a fit. It's possible this just isn't a good fit for him for whatever reason. It's also possible he goes out and throws 5 touchdowns against Colorado and everything just clicks. Maybe they're not that far off. But I hate to say it, but it just might. Maybe the guys who stayed, Brendan talked him into it, and that's awesome. But you also understand why some guys leave, because they want to stay. They want to be coached by the same people who they followed. So that's one of the reasons I think they're having struggles, and one of the reasons why I think a bowl game is, for all the other reasons we mentioned, is kind of a little far. I don't say far-fetched, but I think it's at best even money for me at this point.
Shane, I'm telling you, those people who went to Washington, Jonah Coleman, Ephesians Prysock, among others, I don't think expected to give up 40 points to Iowa and be 3-3 at this point as well.
Maybe not, but I'm just talking. I'm talking about individual player development. Is what that's what I'm saying.
All right, Blair, bowl game is still in play, out the window. Where do you stand?
Yeah, well, I'm going to sell it. I think bowl game's absolutely in play. Standing at 3-3, you only got to win 3 more. Got to go 3-3 again to get to a bowl game. I got 4 of the games at home. The schedule, I think, does get a little bit lighter in terms of the
lighter
quality of competition. Not to say that teams like Colorado aren't improved over a year ago, West Virginia is still, like a really scrappy, dangerous team. I'm going to have my eye on their game, this week in Morgantown. ASU's improved, but they're not. I don't think that they're yet to the level of like where Arizona was a year ago, or the level that Arizona still probably thinks it could get to. Houston's down. That'll be another home game. That should be a win that you can get at home as long as you haven't fallen apart at that point. So no, I think Arizona's got a great chance to get to a bowl game, but I don't think you're really in the construct of the team. I don't think they're thinking about that. I mean, the kind of Shane's point is just get this thing back on track. Just get this thing feeling right. It hasn't really felt right all year. The funny thing was, I mean, not to compare last year to this year, because it is not necessarily, apples to apples. It's apples to oranges. But the first 6 games of last year never really felt right either. I mean, those first 3 to 4 with Jaden DeLaura was a little clunky. And then Noah's getting acclimated, and we're playing 2 really good teams, and it just didn't feel right until it clicked. And I think offensively, I don't know if we're going to get necessarily to the level of execution it was last year, but I do think that it's very well within reach of getting to a next step where we have one of those games where it comes together, where we're not getting stopped on 4th and 1. Instead, the 2nd and 1 play is going for a touchdown. It's breaking for a touchdown. We're not getting stopped on 3 straight downs. I think we're a little bit closer to breaking through offensively than we've been. If I have one concern, my number one concern in terms of how it would be for the bowl outlook is if we keep losing bodies in the defensive secondary, we're going to be way too vulnerable on that end of it. But offensively, I think we're closer to turning things around than it might feel after that BYU game.
I'm going to make it very simple here. If Arizona wins this weekend, a bowl game is absolutely in play and more likely than not. And if they lose this weekend, it's very likely not going to happen. And we're going to be stewing about Arizona football after the ASU game until next August. I think it's as simple as that. It comes down to one game here. All right. Predict your record. Blair, I'll start with you on this one. Predict the final record for Arizona as it stands today. Everything you know, give me a record number.
Boy, I mean, that's really tough because like you just said, Eric, I mean, the outcome
without giving away your pick, right, this week, but still. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give them, let's hear, Colorado, West Virginia, Houston, ASU at home. You win 3 of those, one of the road games. I'll go 4-2. I'll give them 4-2 is right. Within reach.
All right, you'll say 7-5. Shane, what do you say overall?
4-8 or 5-7. I think this could be one of those years where they maybe salvage their season with a Territorial Cup win, even though ASU is definitely playing better at the moment. I think there are probably 1 or 2 more wins in there, but maybe not more than that. And again, that's not me just being Mr. Negative, and I don't think I just think it's going to take longer to fix things, and I think the injuries are really becoming a big deal. So that's my perspective.
If Arizona wins this weekend, 7-5. If they lose this weekend, 5-7. I mean, I know I'm kind of hedging my bets there, but that's how I feel. Well, I guess you can kind of have a feeling of what we're all going to predict. But the next segment, we'll talk a little basketball. But beforehand, let me tell you about Harrah's Auction Casino. It is the only Valley casino with Caesars Rewards, the player's card that pays for Vegas and more. In fact, the reward credits you earn with Caesars Rewards can be redeemed for hotel stays, dining, and more at 50 destinations across the country, including Las Vegas, Lake Tahoe, New Orleans, and dozens of others. Sign up, play, and earn Caesars Rewards only at Harrah's Auction Casino. One card, 50 destinations to enjoy your perks. And we always appreciate our friends at Harrah's Auction Casino sponsoring this program. Make sure to check out their New Year's Eve program with Midland, the band that will be playing out there. Hopefully we'll have some tickets to give away later this fall. Coming up next, let's talk a little basketball and maybe a few other sports here on Wildcat Country.
When you're on the golf course and it's 100 degrees outside, you know what's great? The ice shaker, which keeps your water cold.
You heard the man. Get your custom Arizona Wildcats ice shaker now at iceshaker.com.
All right, Shane, Blair and I were talking about this during the break, and I'm actually curious of your opinion since we beat you back on the stream here. If Arizona were to continue to fall short in football, as you mentioned in your predictions before we went to break, when they play Houston on November 15th, an 8:15 kickoff, with the Wisconsin basketball game at 7 p.m. on the road, Over under 25,000 in person at Arizona Stadium.
The number that came to mind for me was like low 30s. So I'll say over, but it ain't going to be pretty. And you know what? I hope they don't do any color outs for a while, unless you know it's going to be close to a sellout. Like Colorado actually would have been, if you want to do a stripe out, the Colorado ASU game would have been the time to do it. That just looked horrible. But yeah, I'll say over 25, but like low 30s, I would say.
Blair, if you were to be able to change one thing about the in-stadium experience, what would you change? If you were marketing director for a day and could do whatever, what's the first thing you'd change?
Well, I mean, it's not really being marketing director. It's more being, in charge of having a budget to actually make some of the differences. Some of it's structural, just with the stadium, the access, getting around. There's the north end zone is very nice now. I mean, you can, move about freely, and whether you're in your seat or not, you can have a good view of the field and video board. The acoustics of the stadium are terrible for the sound system. So I mean that's just so outdated. That needs to be revamped. And I wish we had more of a footprint around the stadium for when you're walking up to the stadium, halftime, leaving the game, just going to get concessions. It's a very confined space. It's a very outdated venue, obviously. So there's just not a lot of places to spread out and socialize and really want to kind of be with other people. It's more of like a stadium that you come, you get to your seat, and hopefully watch a great game and cheer on the Cats. But there's a lot that can be improved in the overall game day experience and the in-stadium experience. But a lot of it, I think, will take a significant chunk of money, and I'm not sure when or where that's going to come from.
All right, I'm gonna give you one better here. I've been watching, when you come across social videos of Virginia Tech's Enter Sandman, South Carolina with their intro, Tennessee crossing the T, Michigan, Notre Dame. Like, give me something that gets me excited, not a video that we can't hear. Give me the music and turn it up. Get that place pumped. Get some kind of tradition in there where we want, like, they had shout for a while at the end of the third quarter. I know that's kind of like the Oregon thing, but like, give me something, a song that everybody can sing along to, jump around. Like, those are the
Jed tried that.
Well, but he picked a stupid song. I mean, he did a song.
Yeah, these kind of things have to happen organically, though, Eric. I mean, that you can't force a tradition onto people, especially.
That's part of the difference, though, between, we talked earlier in the first segment. I was mentioning about our fan base for basketball. McHale Center, there's a lot that looks different. There's video boards different. The sound system. Jeff is our PA now. I mean, we've had a bunch of different PA announcers in McHale Center over the years. So there's been those changes, but there's still enough that's similar from what the experience was like 25 years ago when Coach Olson was still here and we were going to Final Fours. There's still enough of that tradition and that nostalgia in McHale Center, and we've never really established that or carried it on at Arizona Stadium.
You know what would be kind of fascinating to figure out is, and I think this is still done at McHale Center, when a player on the other team misses the first of two free throws, you hear that 1, 2, 3, nice shot, buddy. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Where did that come from? That's been around as long as I can remember, and that must have started somewhere. But I've only heard that at Arizona or at McHale Center.
I think, and I don't know this for sure, I know there was a couple of those types of traditions that Lute brought with him from the Big Ten when he came from Iowa to Tucson, and whether they're Indiana traditions, Iowa traditions, there was a few of those. I think he was familiar with back at those places in the Midwest. That I think made their way out here, but I don't hold me to that one, but that could have been one of the starting places.
Someone needs to do a little research on that. That would be fascinating.
If anybody has that, please leave that in the comments as well, or tweet us about it. All right, let's talk a little basketball. The AP poll came out. Arizona is ranked 10th. The Big 12 poll came out. Arizona is ranked 5th in the conference. Shane, too high, too low, or just about right for both?
It's about right, without doing more research on every other team in the Big 12 just yet. Based on where Arizona finished last year and who they bring back, I think that's about right. Imagine a couple of years ago being picked to finish 5th in the conference and not feeling terribly insulted for basketball. But the difference between a number 1 and number 5 really seems pretty small. And like in football, there's probably going to be a surprise team or two in there. But I also think Arizona could finish fifth in the Big 12 and earn a 2 or 3 seed in the NCAA tournament and make a deep run, just like in '97 when they finished tied for fourth in what was a 10-team conference and earned a 4 seed and went on to win the whole thing. So I think it's about right. I don't get too bent out of shape with rankings, especially because they mean absolutely nothing in basketball, and we'll just let the chips fall where they should.
All right, Blair, preseason polls are always annoying, but do you agree with where the media voted Arizona in both the national poll and the conference poll?
Yeah, I was, for the Big 12, it seems about right, like Shane said. I mean, it's going to be such a deep league. It's going to be a dynamic league. I mean, you got Kansas and Houston and, some of these teams that have just been up there, each of the last few years. But Arizona's going to have a good team, if it stays healthy, and it's going to be a good team. It's going to have some real high moments during the season and probably a few more low moments that we've been used to. It's not going to be getting beat at a buzzer beater up in Corvallis at, 10:30 on a Thursday night or something. We're not going to have those types of games anymore. I mean, we're going to be going into some really, really good arenas and have great fan bases, and it's going to have a big game feel every night. So the season's going to feel different. I mean, it's I think almost anybody that's been in the Big 12, because it's been the best basketball league the last number of years, I think everybody knows that league schedule, it's not really about where you finish. Okay, Kansas has a lot of pride in how many conference championships they've won, consecutive championships that they had won. But Houston's made some strides there. It's really about that, iron sharpening iron to get yourself ready for March and seeing who's still standing there at the end of the March tournament, because it's just going to be a cutthroat league. So yeah, the preseason picks, fine. We're about anywhere from the top 5 to top 20 team in the nation, and yeah, probably about a top 5 team in the Big 12, and wouldn't be surprised if we're a few spots better or maybe even a few spots worse, depending on how the season shakes out.
Shane, great answer. Shane, over under 7.5 regular season losses.
I'm going to take the over. You're probably looking at a couple of non-conference losses. Maybe not, but Duke's going to be tough. UCLA, Wisconsin, and maybe a surprise in there. And then you look at a 13-7-ish Big 12 record is probably realistic and respectable. So yeah, something like 9-10 losses is likely, and nothing. You talk about the fan base being insufferable. That's not anything to panic about. So it's probably going to, because if Arizona loses 9 or 10 games with that schedule, and I'm including the conference tournament in that, it'll probably mean a pretty good seed in the NCAA tournament, but I would take the over at this point.
All right, Blair, I'm doing a little research here to see how many losses Arizona's had, not including the Pac-12, or this includes the Pac-12 tournament and losing in the tournament over the last few years: 9-7-4, 9-11-15, 8-5-9. Okay, with that said, we're going to toss out the Big 12 tournament. We're going to toss out the NCAA tournament. A max of 2 losses there, obviously. Will Arizona lose more than eight or more games this season during the regular season?
Yeah, I think the 7.5 total you put for the regular season was a good number, because I think if you're going to go through the regular season, 30-5, and then maybe even losing the conference tournament 30-6, something like that. I mean, you're probably the number 1 overall seed or the second overall seed.
Right.
You lose 6 or 7 games during the regular season, you're probably still on that 1 line or the top 2 seed. So that cutoff you put for the regular season, win total is only taking you down to like a 3 seed. If you go, 26-8 or something like that, you're right around a 2 or a high 3 seed. So I think we just have to get used to, we're going to lose a few more games during the regular season than we've been used to in the Pac-12, because that conference season, and when you get into late January and February, when you're kind of that grind of the conference season, you're just going to be going against some really good, tough, physical teams. You're going to go into hostile arenas. I mean, it's just going to be different, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If you can just get used to that change, it's going to be a lot of fun. And I may have tweeted something about this when the schedule came out a week or so ago. Basically, as soon as your game's over, like if you win a big game on a Saturday afternoon, like you've got about 6 hours to enjoy that before you get ready for a game on a Monday night. That's might be even bigger than the one you just won. So we haven't had that in the Pac-12 in a long time. So it's going to be a lot different, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'll take the over. I'll say there's 8 regular season, maybe 9 regular season losses.
Yeah, I think 9.
I'll just add this, Eric. I'll add just real quick. I'll add that I would much rather lose a a tough game at Kansas or Iowa State than lose at Oregon State because his team got bored and complacent. I don't think
Yeah, I just don't
getting
want to get blown
complacent
out. Yeah,
yeah.
play a good game. And if you lose by 6, 7, great. If you lose by 20, different story. My opinion.
There's some blowouts in this league, though. Even good teams
I agree.
get routed every once in a while.
Oh, Arizona's going to get
Run out of
routed.
steam.
Yeah, Arizona's going to get routed a few times. 9 losses is the magic number for me. I think you can still be a top 3 seed with that amount of losses in this conference because your RPI is going to be fantastic. All right, Shane, you said something on Twitter, I believe, about late start times. I saw something on Twitter. I don't know if you put it on there. Somebody did about all these late start times. What did you think of the schedule that Arizona got from a Big 12 conference standpoint?
Well, I mean, complaining about TV schedules is, you might as well be shouting into a vacuum. It is what it is. And I understand having to fit certain games into TV windows. I can't believe in particular how late the Duke game starts. It's a marquee matchup, a couple of top 10 teams, 2 of the biggest brands in college basketball. It's a sequel to what was a great game at Cameron Indoor last year. And you're going to bury it with a 10:30 p.m. East Coast start. Duke fans are going to have to stay up until close to 1 a.m. for the finish.
Which they will, but yes.
I know, but it's still absurd that they have to do it at all. And then Arizona's senior day against their last home game against ASU starts at 9 local time. I think that's ridiculous. I understand every so often you have to have those, but just the games in particular that were picked this time just makes me scratch my head.
Blair, what do you think about that? As somebody who's worked in the athletic department before, we've seen, obviously, there have been problems with football when it comes to start times. Just your thoughts on the basketball schedule that came out.
Yeah, like Shane said, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. It's all dictated by TV. So TV needs the inventory. They need to fill those slots. They get the viewers. They know what they're doing from a business standpoint, putting those games when they do. It is fortunate for fans at times, but one of the interesting things, I've lived in Arizona my whole life. I've never lived in a central or eastern time zone. So I don't know what the way of life is like back there. But I mean, pretty much on any Monday or Tuesday night during a college basketball season my whole life, I turn on a game at 7:00 and you'd be watching Duke and Virginia play. And that's 7:00 our time. That's 9:00 their time. East Coast time zone's a little bit different, but they're used to kind of late local starts. Whereas for us out here out west, we've, 7:30, 8:00 tip off we feel like that's really late. Now we're going to have some 9:00 tip offs. It just takes a little bit of getting used to, I guess. Not easy answer for anybody, but it is what it is. And like Oklahoma State's going to be hosting us, I think, at 10:00 local times, 10 p.m. Central time for a game this year. So it just is what it is. Enjoy the games and get to the arena, I guess, if you can.
The 8:30 game on a Monday night against Iowa State is a tough one. That's a tough pill to swallow. That one, like Thursday night, is like a start to the weekend as far as I'm concerned. So Fridays are usually supposed to be more, casual Fridays and easier. So the Thursday night late starts really didn't bother me as much. You're early in the week on a Monday night, it's 8:30, and now you gotta, I don't know. I find that one a little tricky. Outside of that, Saturday night, 8:00, it's great. I'm with you. We live here. If you're on the East Coast, I understand, and listening to this, I understand you being frustrated, but it's a 2-hour game as compared to football, which is closer to 4. So, that's another way to look at it. All right. A couple more things want to hit on this segment. Talk about the recruiting. Tommy Lloyd's recruiting got Dwayne Aristote. I believe that's how his name, or I probably butchered his name. 5-star there. Just your thoughts, Shane, on Tommy Lloyd, the recruiter. Should there be any concerns? I know there's whispers among the fan base. Duke's getting all these players. Kansas getting all these players. Arizona doesn't get much. Just any concern there?
No, I don't have any. I don't think he's given us any reason to have any. I mean, I think even this year, Tommy Lloyd could have gone out and found another high school commit late or transfer for this year's team if he wanted to, but he decided they're good. And realistically, he plays usually an 8-man rotation. So I think that's fine. If Caleb Love had left, he would have had a top 10 recruiting class again this year with Sanan. So no, I'm not concerned. He's done a fantastic job reloading every year. He scouts the Europe better than maybe any head coach in the country. So between that, high school guys, transfers, I have no reason to be concerned. I don't see any reason why that's going to change.
Your thoughts on Tommy Lloyd, the recruiter? He the other month, Blair, I don't know if you ever heard this. He made fun of me when I asked him, "Well, do you think that the fact that you don't do social media hurts recruiting?" He goes, "We have the number 2 or 3 recruiting class in the country. What do you think?" Your thoughts?
Yeah, I have no concerns. In college basketball, it's changed a lot the last few years. With NIL, the transfer portal. As Shane talked about. Tommy Demi's proven in just 3 short years here that he's he knows how to build a roster. College basketball roster is year to year now, and I don't see that changing anytime soon unless NCAA rules drastically change or NIL drastically changes. So it's year to year. You got to manage your budget in terms of where you're allocating your resources for high school players, for transfer portal, who's coming back. I trust Tommy and his roster management.
All right, and last one in this segment, Arizona baseball was rated the 27th best program among all college baseball teams. Blair, you worked for that team. Is that ranking too low?
Yeah, probably. I think Arizona baseball historically is really one of the elite programs in the country. You go back to Frank Sanset, who started in 1950. He was the one that really started getting Arizona on the map and putting them in the district playoffs at the time, and then what ultimately became the College World Series. He passed the torch to Jerry Kendall in the early 70s, and then Coach Kendall was the one that took us to 3 national championships. He's the one that really broke us through from being a team that just got to Omaha or got to the College World Series to a team that brought the trophy home 3 times. As his career waned in the 90s was really the one real low period that Arizona baseball's had in the last 70 years. And that was about a 7 or 8 year period where he retired and then handed it over to Jerry Stitt. And then Coach Andy Lopez, came in 2002. Took him a little bit of time to build it up, but took Arizona to Omaha several times. Probably should have had 2 national championship caliber teams, but got one finally in 2012. And then he handed the torch to Jay Johnson, who got Arizona to Omaha, got him a game away from a national title. And then now it's Chip Hale back at his alma mater. So, I mean, we've had great coaches here, incredible baseball players here. I mean, the All-Americans, the Terry Franconas, the JT Snows that we've had. I mean, the list goes on. The All-Americans that we've had in baseball. You just look at the U of A Hall of Fame, the players we put in our own Hall of Fame. Pretty remarkable, the talent that we've had here. And then to think that Coach Sanset, Coach Kendall, and Coach Lopez are all college baseball Hall of Fame coaches. I mean, Arizona baseball is up there in the top 10. I mean, you got USC, ASU had a great run through the 80s. They haven't really done a whole lot in the last 25 years, to be candid with you, but there's been some really good West Coast baseball. And so Arizona fits right into that class.
Shane, all time, as Blair said, USC 12 national championships, LSU 7, Texas 6, ASU 5, Arizona, Miami, and Cal State Fullerton 4. And that's it. And Arizona, by the way, also has 4 runner-up finishes, albeit 3 of them were between 1956 and 1963, as Blair alluded to, and then the one in 2016. But Arizona's been in the finals 8 times, and they're ranked 27th. This seems like a complete joke.
Yeah, well, Arizona baseball is fascinating because I feel like the perception versus reality between Arizona baseball and Arizona men's basketball, they're kind of flipped. Not men's basketball has had a lot of success, but if you just look at postseason success, which is what we all measure first and foremost, Arizona baseball, they're tied for 9th in all-time College World Series appearances, 6th in wins in the College World Series, just games won, and tied for 5th in national titles, like you said. It's not the perception is that it is not a top-tier program, that the Arizona baseball brand is not up there with some of the others, whereas the men's basketball brand is top 10, even though they haven't been to the Final Four in over 20 years. So I in a way, I think it's fair because the perception of the program and some of the turnover. I mean, if you're an elite program, you don't have a coach leaving for a better job typically, like Jay Johnson did. So I get that. And the success has been kind of sporadic and maybe not as consistent as basketball. Maybe that's one of the problems is the men's basketball team is almost always very good, regardless of NCAA tournament performance. But I think certainly if you factor in perception, number 27, maybe it's about right. But in terms of accomplishments, Arizona baseball is bona fide top 10 all time.
Coming up next, let's make picks on week 8 in college football. Colorado or Arizona? We'll find out after we hear from our sponsors.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi folks, here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
All right, Shane, it is time for picks. We're glad to have Blair with us here. He has not made picks with us this year, but the experts are hanging in. They have 31 points on our scale. I have 34. You have 28. Once again, you get 1 point for a spread pick, correct spread pick, 1 point for an upset special cover, another bonus point if they win outright. And Arizona's game is worth 2, and I have not gotten very many of those right this year. I have a feeling, based on what we talked about earlier, that there will be some differences. But let us start with our upset special. Shane, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, I was feeling really good about an upset special last weekend. Georgia Tech and North Carolina were tied, and then with an 80-yard run in the last within 10 seconds left. I would have had two straight victories there. But for this week, give me Nebraska as a 6.5-point road underdog against Indiana. Hoosiers are off to a great start, but I think Nebraska is the better team. They're 5-1, and I like them to cover and maybe even get the upset.
Blair, your upset special is?
Yeah, the line's not, super big on this one, but I'm going to take Arkansas, knocking off LSU this week. LSU had a nice come-from-behind victory last week, feeling pretty good about itself. A little bit of a classic matchup down there in the SEC this week. I think the underdog and maybe a little bit overlooked Arkansas Razorbacks will sneak up and get the Tigers.
Very sharp pick there. I'm going Louisville over number 4 Miami. Louisville, don't forget, they're in the top 15 a few weeks ago, or about a month ago. They're getting 4.5 points at home. I think they win the game outright, so I'll go with them. Start on Friday night in the Big 12, Oklahoma State at BYU, who is a 9-point favorite. To me, this feels like too many points, and I think Oklahoma State finds a way to keep it within a touchdown, despite the fact that whole BYU stat that we gave out on a couple shows, Shane, that didn't come to fruition. Your thoughts on this game?
You got to think OK State's going to get it together at some point. They're coming off a bye. I think BYU wins. I think they stay undefeated. But get 9 points after being favored by just 3 against Arizona seems a little strange to me. So I think BYU wins, but I don't think they cover.
Blair?
I think I'm in agreement with you. I think it's I think this game's a little bit closer than that spread. I think Oklahoma State, they've just been in this, they've just always found ways. They're a little bit down right now, but they always kind of find a way to get better as the season goes along under Mike Gundy. So I think they'll scrap something together, keep this thing close. But I'm impressed with BYU, especially at home, getting one of those night games. I think they'll get about a 3-point victory over Oklahoma State.
Fair enough. All right, big one in the SEC. Number 7 Alabama at number 11 Tennessee. A couple of teams that look to be heading in the wrong direction. Alabama is a 3-point favorite. Blair, start with you.
Yeah, interesting matchup here of can Alabama fix its defense and can Tennessee fix its offense a little bit. I'm going to actually go ahead and go with the balls at home. Been a little bit surprised how they've fallen off these last couple of weeks. I think it's going to be an incredible atmosphere, though. Alabama already had the big win against Georgia a few weeks ago. They've been scuffling since. I'm going to take Tennessee to knock them off in a close one.
Shane, the stats are something like 14-6 to the underdog in SEC versus SEC matchups. We saw Blair take one with Arkansas over LSU. Which way do you lean, Tennessee, Alabama?
Yeah, Blair and I are going to agree again. Both teams, like you said, Eric, were lucky to escape with wins against inferior opponents last week. Alabama's almost riding a 2-game losing streak at this point. Very fortunate to survive after South Carolina recovered that onside kick late. In coin flips like this, in terms of the odds, I tend to look at number 1, who's at home, number 2, who has a better defense. Tennessee checks both of those boxes. They're allowing about 100 fewer yards per game than Alabama is, so I'm going to take the Vols to win outright.
Not a bad pick, but I'm going the other way. I'm going Alabama here. Listen, the Tennessee defense is for real. They haven't given up 20 points yet this year. And Alabama's offense is getting progressively worse every game except for between game 2 and game 3 where they had the same amount of points. They've gone down. So 64, 42, 42, 41, 35, 27. I have a feeling they'll go lower here. I like the under as my top play, but I'm going Alabama 26, Tennessee 20. How about Michigan? -3 at Illinois. Game is on CBS at 12:30 Arizona time. Blair, start with you.
Yeah, this will be a very low scoring game. I feel like a true slugfest there in the Big Ten. I'll take Michigan to scrap something together. They'll cobble something together, win ugly, but it'll be a tight game. I would not be surprised if Illinois wins, but I think Michigan's got just enough talent and playmaking to break through on that one.
Shane?
Yeah, Blair's probably right, but I think Illinois is maybe just slightly better team right now, though not by much. I kind of just don't like picking this game at all, and I kind of resent you for putting it on here. But Michigan is one of the worst offensive teams in the Big Ten. Illinois is at home, so give me Illinois.
Okay, so last week Illinois was playing Purdue. They're up 24-3 at halftime, and the final score after one overtime was 50-49. What happened to Illinois' defense? Normally, I would agree with Blair in a low-scoring game, but I actually think it's going to be higher scoring. Michigan seems like all their games are ending 27-24 at this point, so I'll go with it again. I think Michigan wins 27-24. I mean, you want to give 2.5, 3. I'm going to give myself Michigan for the 3-point cover, and if it pushes, it pushes. Okay, Kansas State is a 3-point favorite at West Virginia. Now, West Virginia, it's kind of a desperate game for them. Kansas State coming off a 3-point win at Colorado. Shane, I mean, we know you liked West Virginia. We've talked about it in the preseason, but they have underachieved. Do they get it done this weekend?
Yeah, I think West Virginia kind of needs to win as badly as Arizona does, and this is more even a matchup than you might think if you just look at the stats. I just think K-State's a better team, West Virginia's at home. They desperately need to win. K-State, I think, is probably the third best team in the conference at this point. So give me K-State to win and cover.
Blair.
Yeah, interesting matchup. I think K-State's a very, very solid team. I think they're better at home, though, than they are on the road. Morgantown's a tough place to play, as Shane alluded to. Almost a desperation game there in Morgantown. I'm gonna take West Virginia to pull off the upset. I think this will be a classic Big 12 game, though. It's going to be very close, but I'm going to give the home team the edge here.
I'm a little concerned about West Virginia losing 2 in a row at home, albeit to probably the 2 best teams in the Big 12 before they come to Arizona. So I think they're going to beat Kansas State in this one. I'm going to take the 3 points and think they win the game outright. All right, Georgia at Texas. This is one of the games of the year. Texas is a 3.5-point favorite. Who you got?
Who are you asking?
Sorry, I'm going to start with Blair on this one. My bad.
Yeah. This will be Texas's kind of welcome to the SEC moment in terms of like this is what life in the new SEC is. I mean, these big games in the regular season. Georgia's already played some big stage games against Clemson, Alabama. They lost the heartbreaker 2 a few weeks ago. I think Georgia's going to go in there. I think they're going to humble Texas a little bit. I think Texas is a really good team, one of the most complete teams in the country. But Georgia's used to this stage, and I think I'm not sure that Texas is going to be quite ready to win one of these games at home.
Shane.
I don't feel as good about this pick after listening to what Blair just said, but it's pretty simple for me. Texas is the best offensive team in the SEC. They're the best defensive team in the SEC. Quinn Ewers is back. He looked great against Oklahoma. Texas is at home, and Georgia's good. Texas is a little bit better right now, so give me the Longhorns to win and cover.
Shane, do you know what Georgia's record is against non-Alabama teams since 2020?
Probably very, very good.
How about 50-0?
Okay.
Not that that's going to continue for the long haul, but I think Georgia finds a way to pull the upset. Lower scoring game. I think the total is too high at 56.5 as well. Similar to Tennessee, Alabama. I think this one's a little bit lower scoring, but I'm going with Georgia in the upset. I kind of like Blair's pick there on that one. All right. How about the Sun Devils? They're 5-1. Early game, early start at Cincinnati, 9 a.m. The body clock thing. Shane, Cincinnati is a 2.5-point favorite. Another team that nobody expected anything of, and yet they're pretty darn good as well at 4-2. Which side are you taking?
Yeah, this kind of seems like a game where ASU would come back down to earth, and Cincinnati is one of the best offensive teams in the conference. But I just think there's a ton of belief and buy-in with ASU right now. No one's been able to figure out how to slow down Cam Scadaboo, not even Utah. And Cincinnati has the third worst rushing defense in the conference. I think ASU is going to come down to earth, but I don't think it happens this weekend. I'm going to take ASU to win on the road.
Okay. Blair, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting matchup because Cincinnati's a little bit of a unique team to me because they don't they don't look very good at times. And then next thing you know, they're right in a game or they're winning a game. ASU's kind of been somewhat similar. ASU will look really good at times, and then they'll kind of go into a funk for a while. So I think this might be one of those little bit of a stalemate games, and it might be the team that comes out first, that gets that early advantage, that's able to pull through in the end. I think that's a little bit hard going on the road into, I don't know, enemy territory, but also foreign territory. I mean, when Arizona, ASU, any of us Pac-12 teams go into Cincinnati just feels so weird. I think that might be a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of a slow start for ASU. So I'll give the home team a slight edge in that one and take Cincinnati to cover.
All right, let me say this. I don't think Arizona State played all that well last week against Utah, but Kyle Whittingham was so stupid to leave a guy that clearly was not right. Any of us felt like we could have made better throws than Cam Rising, who couldn't move and couldn't throw. It was one of the most foolish coaching decisions I've ever seen. While the Sun Devils I think, are better than Arizona at this point, I don't think they survived with the early body clock game at Cincinnati. So I'm going with the Bearcats to move to 5-2. All right, and finally, Colorado is at Arizona. The line we're going to give on the show is 3.5. It has trended up to 4.5. I do not think it will end up around there. I think it'll end up around 3.5, maybe even below 3. Wouldn't shock me. Now with the news of Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn Jr. playing, we don't know Takario Davis's status. I'm actually going to go first on this one. I've gone back and forth on this pick. Let me give you a couple stats. Deion Sanders, Colorado have been together for 18 games. In 7 of those games, the Buffs have been favorites. In those games, they're 6-1. As in the other 11 games, they have been underdogs, and they are 2-9 straight up in those games. Somehow, some way, this is the last week I'm going to do it. If they don't prove me right, I'm going Arizona to win this game 34-27. Blair, you're up next.
Well, Eric, I'm really excited you're picking the Wildcats. I certainly want to pick the Wildcats too. Here's my thinking, with this week for where Arizona is. I think this is a difficult week. It's a critical week, as we've talked about earlier, for Arizona. And I think one of the things that Arizona needed to do earlier in the year, and I think Coach Brennan and his staff did a real good job after the K-State game, was taking a little bit of the pressure off the team. They had the bye week to do it. I think they were a little bit more relaxed. I think they had a little bit more fun. And I think they went into Utah just focused, just ready to play. I think the game against Texas Tech was a very disappointing setback at home. I don't think they quite fully recovered. They played a hot BYU team last week in Provo. I think this week for Coach Brennan and the staff, it's important to keep this team engaged and having fun a little bit. One of the things we have not seen, and I've been a little bit surprised out of this team this year, is on special teams. We've not been aggressive on special teams. We haven't gotten after a kick, haven't blocked a kick, haven't really shown much in the return game. I would expect, whether it's on offense or on special teams, I think there's going to be something in the game plan this week. A trick play on offense, maybe getting Tedero McMillan in a situation where he can throw the ball. We've seen that in the past with the Jed Fish team. We haven't really seen that this year. Getting a kick block, finding the time in the game to get a punt block maybe against Colorado this week. I think those, just pick a couple of those. You don't have to get wild, but you put a couple of those things in the game plan for the team to think about this week and get excited about. And then you find the right opportunities in the game to call it. Those can sometimes be the difference in terms of finding the right momentum, making a play, taking a 1-score game to a 2-score game. That's something I talked a lot about a couple of years ago in Jed's second year. Was it almost felt like we could never get to that second score, that 2-score lead, where we felt like we had a little bit of a buffer to overcome one of our mistakes. I feel like that will be important for Arizona. I think if Arizona gets a 2-score lead this week at home, it will win. And I'm going to take Arizona at Arizona Stadium to win by a score of 33-24.
Okay, Shane, give us your pick.
Yeah, I love your guys' pick, but I can't pick Arizona to win this game. They scored 61 points their first game of the season, and they're second to last in the Big 12 in points per game somehow. That tells you how anemic the offense has been since then. Colorado's better in most offensive categories, including third down conversions and red zone offense. They don't commit a lot of penalties, and they're number 1 in the Big 12 in forcing penalties by their opponents. And Arizona hasn't scored more than 23 points in the game since week 1, and they have not done well against mobile quarterbacks. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to have a big game. Give me Colorado to win 34-20.
34-20. All right, Shane, I hope you're wrong. Maybe I have blind faith. Maybe Blair and I have blind faith. We're going to take a shot here. Come on, Brent. Prove us right here. And if not, I mean, yeah, things are going in the wrong direction. Cannot wait to see Tetero McMillan against Travis Hunter. If Takario Davis plays him against Travis Hunter on the other side, first round picks all over the field at Arizona Stadium on Saturday. You haven't been able to say that. I guess, you could have potentially 5 or more first round picks on the field, in the same game, which is absolutely wild. So Blair, thank you so much for joining Shane and I. It's been an awesome show. For Blair Willis and Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.